A blue beam that cut through the sky over Seoul, a sphere suspended half a meter from someone else's porch in New Jersey, a ring of fire in a Brazilian forest that burned and did not burn the trees. All this was filmed by different people in different ends of the planet, almost at the exact same time. And here is the question from which one can no longer escape. Are these all still coincidences, or the beginning of something for which none of us is ready? Look closely. You will not be able to explain some of these frames. Enjoy watching. In the sky over Mexico, people noticed a glow they had not seen before, a blindingly bright source of light in the shape of a star. But the real thing began later. Around it, one after another, smaller objects began to appear, blue, flat, oval-shaped, and each having separated moved away from the central light in its own direction, along its own route. Not a single one repeated the path of another. Below, they watched this in silence, not understanding what was happening. Later, a version took root among the eyewitnesses. The objects dispersed to different districts, as if for covert observation of the city. There is no proof for this version, but throwing such a picture out of your head is not an easy task. 3 unidentified blazing objects in a single week, and all over American soil. The first was caught on a dashboard camera on a deserted Texas highway, a blinding streak of orange and white fire cutting the sky to the very horizon. A few days later, a doorbell camera in a quiet Georgia neighborhood filmed something massive and fiery crawling over the tree line with a tail of sparks behind. And then the third, eerily green, floated silently over a residential street in Tennessee, bathing entire houses in its otherworldly light. No one reported the details. 3 states, 3 objects, 7 days. A coincidence? You could say so, if you really want to sleep peacefully. Residents of Florida one night discovered an object in the dark sky that no one could confidently name. It hung in place and changed its glow, but changed it somehow meaningfully. Not the steady blinking of an airplane, not the frozen beam of a drone, something third. On one of the recordings, the voice of an eyewitness is heard, who seriously advises everyone to urgently mend their relationships with God, and by the intonation it is clear, the person is not in the mood for jokes. The videos scattered instantly, and on all of them is the same thing, a bright, iridescent glow hanging between the trees. Skeptics said, a drone. Those who watched for more than a minute answered one thing: drones do not change light like that. Florida authorities remained silent. The mystery remained wide open. Late at night, a resident of Brazil went out into the street and saw 3 glowing spheres above him. They burned with a warm reddish light, each separately, distinctly, and floated across the dark sky with a calm, even confidence. Too even for something random. All the way they kept a triangle. They did not accelerate, did not spread out, did not break formation. And then they began to go out, one after another, neatly, as if someone took turns unplugging them from the network. And nothing was left. A single light in the sky can be written off as anything. 3 lights, marching in formation and disappearing in order, that is a completely different conversation. A cargo ship was sailing through the waters near the Bermuda Triangle, an area with which dozens of disappeared ships and airplanes are already associated, when the crew saw ahead what no one was ready for. Colossal glowing objects hung right above the ocean. On the left, a red one, low over the water. On the right, a bright blue one, wide and flat, and from under it, a pillar of light struck down onto the surface of the sea, as if something was studying the water. Sailors are pragmatic people. They have a schedule, cargo, contracts. But having looked at this, the ship turned around and completely changed its route, just so as not to go any further in that direction. Sometimes a detour of hundreds of kilometers is the most reasonable decision in life. A traveler was descending from a hill to a small Mexican town when over the roofs he saw what rooted him to the spot. In the smoky night air above the houses hung flat, glowing discs of a deep red color, wide, motionless, right above the sleeping neighborhood. And then one of them released something. A small glowing sphere separated, descended almost to the ground and moved slowly over the roofs, methodically, house by house, as if it was looking for something specific below. Having circled, it rose back up and all the objects simultaneously went into the sky. What they were looking for in an ordinary town, no one ever found out, and it is unknown whether they found it. There are sunsets, and there are evenings when the sky does something that makes people stop believing their own eyes. A crowd gathered on a promenade in Thailand and did not disperse. Everyone was looking up at the clouds, which had folded into a dense, textured ceiling of fire. It stretched from one edge of the horizon to the other and pressed down on the sea from above like something alive. Science has a name for this: unusually bright altocumulus cloudiness that caught the last light of the departing day. Formerly, just clouds and the sun at the right angle. But ask anyone who stood under that sky that evening and you will hear a completely different word: unforgettable. Everything in the sky has rules: to rise, to travel its path, to set. This one did not obey any. A large glowing mass appeared over Florida and simply stayed. It burned with a deep orange light all day and all night, not dimming and not shifting a single degree. And up close, something opened up that is even harder to fit in the head. A dark, dense core wrapped in a glowing ring. On the recordings, you can hear people shouting to each other that they see it right now with their own eyes. They filmed from parks, from streets, from open fields, and on all the footage is the same stubborn presence over the city. Not a single agency stepped forward. The footage was left to speak for itself, and it speaks to this day. Few recordings cause such serious disputes. On the video from Arizona, a glowing disc-shaped object burning red and pink low over the horizon, and around it at different distances drift white spheres from all sides like guards around the center. And in this formation, an order could be read that makes it very difficult to just brush it off. The geography adds spice. In Arizona is one of the most closed and active airspaces of the country. On the one hand, this is a convenient explanation: military, tests. On the other, precisely because of this, anything unidentified there looks doubly suspicious. The circle closes. There is no answer inside it. A man was driving at night through a quiet residential area when through the windshield he noticed a strange glow over the street. He stopped and got out of the car. You do not drive past something like that. Inside a cloud right above the houses burned a whole cluster of orange lights, dozens, all of one deep orange hue, all in one cloud, hanging over the streetlights and roofs. On the recording, his confusion is heard. He says he has no idea what it is, the year is 2026, and there is no explanation. That night, no one found him in the whole neighborhood. The lights burned over the sleeping houses and were not going to explain anything. A person was walking through a Texas forest and stumbled upon what had no place there. Between the trees, right near the ground, hung a large, shapeless mass, half smoke, half color, half something that does not fit into any known category. It continuously moved inside itself, contracted into new shapes, dissolved, reassembled, flowing from gray into pink and deep red, and without stopping for a single second on one thing. At the same time, the mass itself hung in place with an eerie immobility. The traveler decided that there might be a portal in front of him and left without checking. The forest was left alone with what hung in it. On a video from an unknown source, a night sky and a bright moving point. Suddenly it slows down and releases from itself a huge glowing cloud which spreads over the blackness in blue and white waves, becoming bigger and bigger. The people who filmed this did not understand what they were seeing, and they are easy to understand. The sight looks truly alien. But this mystery has an answer, and it is entirely earthly. It was a Falcon 9 rocket of the company Space Exploration Technologies Corporation. At high altitude, the operation of its engines in the rarefied air creates exactly this effect: a giant glowing cloud over half the sky. Sometimes the most unearthly thing in the sky turns out to be the work of human hands. The truth is, far from always. An ordinary overnight stay in the forest. A tent, silence, not a soul around. A man raised his head to the sky and froze. Over the trees hung lights such as he had never seen. They glowed purple and pink and constantly changed shape, as if they could not decide what they wanted to be. And then happened what made him catch his breath. The lights folded into a perfectly even ring, a glowing circle in the middle of the black sky, looking like an open passage to somewhere else. He filmed and did not understand what he was looking at. When the recording spread across the network, an unpleasant thing became clear. No one understood. The ring hung over the forest and dissolved, leaving neither a trace nor an answer. Late night, an empty street somewhere in Chile. A man is walking through the city and suddenly sees ahead what forces him to stop. Right in the middle of the roadway, very close to the ground, hangs a huge glowing sphere. The light from it is so dense that it floods everything around and literally erases the details of the street. Houses, streetlights, road markings. The person takes a step, then another one. The sphere does not move. It just hangs, absolutely motionless, as if waiting. For several seconds, they stand opposite each other in the middle of the night road, a human and a something, and then instinct takes its toll. The man turns around and walks away quickly. What remained behind his back that night, he does not know to this day. That night in Seoul, thousands of people simultaneously raised their heads. From a point somewhere near the city, a lonely, bright blue beam struck vertically upwards, perfectly straight, like a laser, going right into the clouds and seemingly having no end. And over the roofs of the high-rises hung a glowing blue spot surrounded by a wide ring of light, which spread over the clouds around. Dozens of people filmed from different districts, from different angles, and all the cameras showed the same thing. A metropolis with millions of residents and cameras on every corner, and not a single coherent explanation. The beam went out as suddenly as it appeared. The question remained hanging in the air. Everything began with the color. Dark clouds over Austin, state of Texas, poured with a deep orange glow, as if something was flaring up behind them. Then a ring appeared in this glow. And next happened what made people on the streets scream. From the glowing area, a beam struck down, sharp, bright, similar to lightning, but not lightning. Too straight, too aimed. Eyewitnesses later honestly admitted, at that moment it seemed that the sky was tearing apart right over their heads. Someone in the frame says that this is, possibly, a sign of the end of the world. The sky calmed down a few minutes later. The people, much later. On a video from Austin, a night road and a sphere of light right on the asphalt. Not a reflection, not a streetlight. The object stands in the middle of the roadway and radiates so much energy that everything around for dozens of meters is painted in purple and blue. Look closely at such frames and a strange feeling appears, as if something is locked inside the sphere. Something powerful that is trying to push a way out for itself through this light. The most interesting thing became clear later. That same night, people in different parts of the city saw something similar. Different streets, different cameras, one and the same phenomenon, and not a single version that would converge with the picture. Over the clouds of Brazil, eyewitnesses filmed what is hard to call simply lights. 4 enormous glowing objects hung in the sky. 3 burned with a deep orange, the 4th with a sharp white. And between them, in the gaps, blinked smaller objects, and each held its point, not shifting a single meter. This entire construction stretched over a huge area of the sky and kept its shape, not drifting. Here is what hooks the strongest. Random lights do not act like that. Here, each light source seemed to know its place exactly in the general formation, as if a scheme was built in the sky, only no one below knew whose. Somewhere between the clouds and the border of space, a camera caught a phenomenon that only a few people on the planet have seen with their own eyes. Giant white electrical flashes struck not downwards to the Earth, but upwards to the stars. On the recording, the sky does not look earthly at all. Below glow deep pink and red clouds, and out of them torn pillars of light shoot into the starry blackness. These are red sprites, discharges that are born high above thunderstorms. Each lives for a few milliseconds. You blink and you missed it. Science in general acknowledged their existence only at the end of the 1980s, when a sprite accidentally got caught on a sensitive camera. Therefore, such frames are among the rarest that have been managed to be filmed in the wild. The 20th of October of the year 2025, a forest trail camera in Brazil, set up to film animals, records something completely different. Between the trees, a ring burns, an object of regular shape, glowing with a thick orange and yellow, so bright that it illuminates the entire section of the forest around. And here is a detail that breaks the most obvious explanation. Branches a few meters away from it do not even smolder. Fire does not behave like that. It crawls, catches onto the dry stuff, jumps from tree to tree. This ring did not crawl anywhere. It simply hung among the trunks, all by itself in the middle of the night forest. The recording exists. An explanation does not to this day. A person was walking along the railway tracks when he noticed a light ahead where there should be no light. Right above the rails, between the tracks, moved a bright blue glowing sphere. It radiated a dense blue light in all directions, illuminating the sleepers and the embankment, and moved unhurriedly as if going about its business. Then it crawled off the tracks and went into the forest standing along the road. The man did not follow it, and to be honest, it is hard to judge him. Whatever energy fed this thing, testing it on yourself at night near a dense forest is a very bad idea. Sometimes the most correct find is the one you never approached. A man was filming from a roof a most ordinary evening city in the United Kingdom. Panorama, lights, nothing special, until what he was not expecting burst into the frame. From the sky, a beam of light struck down and crashed into the city with the most powerful flash. Between the buildings swelled a sphere of blindingly white and orange light, like from an explosion. And then, the strangest thing, nothing. No destruction, no sirens, not a single piece of news, not a single message about an incident on the ground. The city continued to live, as if nothing had happened, and it is exactly this silence that scares more strongly than the flash itself. A strike of such force cannot pass without a trace, but this one passed. A woman was standing in her yard and filming on her telephone what made her voice tremble. The sky over the neighborhood was exploding with short, furious flashes, time after time, and a deep rumble rolled through the air, making everything around rattle. On the recording, her words are heard. This sound woke up the entire neighborhood. Viewers in the comments suggested a version: a safety valve at a power plant, an emergency pressure release. Sounds reasonable, but rewatch the footage and the version begins to unravel. Too large scale, too furious for a valve. The most uncomfortable thing is when there seems to be a rational explanation, but it stubbornly does not add up with what the camera recorded. A man from New Jersey looked out of his own house and saw it. A blindingly bright blue sphere hung half a meter above the ground right on his driveway, very close to the porch. The light radiated from it in dense waves in all directions, flooding the yard, the street, and everything around. The owner filmed from behind the glass, from the inside, and he is easy to understand. Going out into the yard to face such a thing is something far from everyone would decide to do. The sphere was in no hurry. It hung for a bit as if looking around and then moved from its place and left. What it was, no one could ever answer. And when the unexplainable appears not in the news, but 2 steps from your door, the words somewhere out there disappear from your head forever. The streets of Cleveland recently saw what the city dwellers did not find a single convenient explanation for. Along the ground, along the road, rushed a dense wall of smoke, fast, thick, and in this very speed and density there was something frankly unnatural. Ordinary smoke does not move like that. It swirls, disperses, obeys the wind. This one moved like a wave, purposefully and low, and underneath it, stripes of deep orange and red light pulsed on the asphalt, and the whole scene looked as if it had been cut not from a city night, but from somewhere completely different. Cleveland has seen various things, but such frames do not let go. They stay and gnaw from the inside. Romania owns one of the clearest recordings of an unidentified flying object that have ever made it to the network, and the frames speak for themselves. In the sky hangs a dark, rounded apparatus with a bright, glowing ring, and from under it a wide, powerful beam presses down. It rests on the ground and slowly moves across it, meter by meter. Exactly this is what hooks the strongest. The apparatus does not fly, does not maneuver, does not leave. It stands in place and guides the beam along the ground, exactly the way someone who is searching behaves, combing the territory. Below that night there were people, and none of them ever understood what exactly was being searched for right under their feet, and why exactly there. The evening of the 20th of July of the year 2025, people in Virginia go out into the street and their gaze rests on a sky that is behaving incorrectly. In the heavy gray clouds, in a wide scattering over the tree line, lights are blinking, green and red, many all over the firmament. It has not yet gotten completely dark. A twilight light hangs in the air and these flashes cut the clouds right through, while each one holds its place. And below stand people with raised telephones. They stand and film simply because there is nothing else that can be done. Sometimes this is all that is left for a human in the face of the sky, to look and record. The year 2021, a residential neighborhood in Colombia. People on the street raise their heads and hundreds of tiny glowing lights fall from the sky. Orange and white, they pour in different directions all over the murky sky, like a slow-burning rain. And here is where the real strangeness begins. Right near the ground, every single little light simply disappeared. No impact, no sound, no mark on the asphalt, as if they ceased to exist exactly at the moment when they were supposed to touch the ground. One night the sky over a Peruvian city came to life, all of it from edge to edge filled with bright white blinking lights, which rushed in different directions at great speed. There were so many of them that it seemed hundreds of objects were simultaneously moving over the city, and each had its own trajectory. The people below were in real terror, and try to judge them. Imagine what it is like to stand under a sky that has suddenly turned into a living swarm, and then everything ended, abruptly. A few minutes of chaos and every light went out. All at once, as if on command. The sky became the same again in 1 second. The questions remained for years. A man from Knoxville, state of Tennessee, was filming a thunderstorm advancing on his neighborhood. The storm was frightening in itself. A giant dark funnel was rotating over the houses, pulling the clouds into itself. But the camera caught what should not be in a thunderstorm. Right under this rotating mass inside the storm burned 2 orange lights, warm, steady, completely motionless despite the fact that around them everything was rushing and tearing. As if in the very heart of the hurricane someone had settled down and calmly observed from above what was happening. What could burn with such a steady, homey light inside a raging sky, no one explained. Iran, night, a children's football match. An ordinary game, right up to the moment when someone on the field raised their head. Right above the stadium hung bright, glowing lights. Several pieces lined up in a loose diagonal, each lights of a steady, warm white light. The game stopped by itself. The ball rolled to the side and everyone who was on the pitch, players, spectators, simply stood and looked up. The children, who all evening did not care about the sky, froze under it, with their heads thrown back. An official explanation for those lights was not given either on that day or after. Not a single one, not even an unsuccessful one. One evening in the clouds over France appeared what stopped people mid-step. A giant oval ring, as if burned into the sky, stretched over their heads and glowed evenly, while the clouds around it lived an ordinary life, moved, floated, changed shape. This contrast was the creepiest thing. The whole sky is like a sky, and only the oval burns, without moving. Eyewitnesses later said directly, it was scary. Many, without hesitation, decided that they were seeing a sign of the near end of the world. And when the recording spread across the internet, no one felt calmer. The frames turned out to be exactly as creepy as the stories of those who stood beneath them. The sky over Berlin was ripped open by a burning bolide. Cameras filmed how the object falls apart into pieces and dissolves in a blinding fireball on its way down. A rare case, here there is an answer, and an official one at that. The Asteroid Observation Service of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration confirmed the event. A small asteroid safely burned up in the atmosphere to the west of the city. No threat to people on the ground, they separately emphasized there. Everything is so, and yet there is a difference between the dry line of an official statement and the spectacle of a piece of space that burns and falls apart right above your head. Egypt is already a country where every stone keeps secrets, but what a traveler saw near the pyramids of Giza took this mysteriousness to a completely different level. He was driving past the ancient complex at night and noticed a strange glow rising right from behind one of the pyramids. 3 bright oval objects silently hovered over a structure that is about 4,500 years old. Then a 4th rose to them and the entire foursome dissolved into the night sky. What it was remained unknown, but the eyewitness himself did not doubt. What rose that night was connected to the pyramids. There are things you do not expect when looking out of a porthole at an altitude of 35,000 feet. That is almost 11 kilometers over Arizona. A passenger of a flight filmed exactly that. Glowing objects were moving in the night sky, and the light from them diverged in long, sharp beams, cutting the darkness in all directions. Not a single airline recognized the objects as theirs. The military remained silent. The dispatchers did not publicly say a word. And yet, at such an altitude, there are no accidental things. Every aircraft in this sky is accounted for, signed and guided from the ground from takeoff to landing. Everyone, except what got into that porthole. It is hard to surprise Moscow with anything, but what appeared in its sky recently forced even the most unshakable to stop. Low over the roofs of the city moved a glowing green sphere, pulling behind itself a sharp strip of light like a tail. It was filmed from windows, from streets, from different points of the city. There are several recordings, and on all of them the same thing. Official statements did not follow. Neither flights nor military activity were connected with the object. And here is what is worth keeping in mind. This is one of the most observed cities on the planet, where cameras look from every corner. And still something passed over it unnoticed, by everyone except for random eyewitnesses. The sky over Canada was once illuminated by something enormous. and the recordings left no room for simple answers. The object looked colossal, a rotating, glowing mass of orange and yellow, in shape almost a cloud, but too bright and too orderly for something natural. It hung long enough to be clearly filmed, and then began to slowly go out. And right here is the strangest part of this story. When the giant dissolved, in its place remained two small, dimly glowing spheres. They simply drifted where just a moment ago there had been something enormous. The year 2009. From China, a recording spreads that the internet has never been able to forget. In a clear day sky hangs a dark object, and it looks like neither a sphere nor a spot of light. It has shape, volume, mass. It is clearly something solid and three-dimensional. But the main thing is, next to it. From the side of the object strikes a beam of dense white energy, connecting it with something that many have described with one short word: a portal. Years later, the recording surfaced again, and all the questions returned along with it, not having gotten any lighter over this time. Daytime filming, a solid object, a beam into nowhere, 17 years and still not a single answer. Residents of a Brazilian city filmed what did not look normal at all. The sky suddenly poured with an immense orange glow. It spread across the entire horizon and was so bright that it overpowered the lights of an entire city. Buildings, streets, everything around ended up under this strange light, as if something colossal was happening behind the mountains. It does not look like lightning. Lightning strikes and goes out in a fraction of a second, but this glow stood long enough for the whole city to freeze and watch without tearing their eyes away. Then the light left quickly, just as it had appeared. What could burn behind the mountains with such force they never found out? Mountains know how to stay silent. A passenger of a flight flying over the clouds recently filmed outside the porthole several glowing spheres. They hung at an altitude scattered across the sky in a way that no aviation group flies and no chain of satellites lines up. And here is what is more important than the recording itself. Previously, such reports came rarely and from one point. Now it is a pattern, stretched across continents and airspaces of different countries. The spheres are becoming more numerous, and they are no longer filmed by enthusiasts with telescopes, but by ordinary people with a seat by the window, random witnesses who no one prepared for this, and who have not a single reason to invent anything. When the glowing sphere over New Jersey got into the lens of the filming crew of the news channel American Broadcasting Company in broad daylight, the usual excuses ended at once. Bad lighting? It was daytime. Shaky amateur filming? A professional camera. Unreliable witness? A whole news brigade. And in the frame, a glowing spherical object without identifiable engines and without an articulate origin. The version with drones has a ceiling. A paper trail stretches behind a drone, registration, owner, route. Nothing stretches behind these spheres, neither documents nor explanations. Only one thing: they are filmed more and more often, in more and more new places, and with an ever-increasing number of witnesses. In the middle of an open desert, a traveler stumbled upon what not a single survival manual prepares you for. From the dry ground rose a glowing winged figure. The eyewitness described it simply: it looked exactly like an angel, and in the glow itself there was something heavenly, a feeling that afterwards is impossible to shake off of yourself. He felt uneasy. He left quickly, trying not to turn around unnecessarily, and when he finally did turn around, behind was only the desert. Number 1. On footage from Mexico, a burning object cuts the sky at a steep angle, leaving behind a fiery trail, and goes straight towards the forest massif below. And here is what does not add up with a meteor. The object is dark, solid, and does not fall apart in flight. It descends in one piece, evenly, right to the tree line. People saw it go into the forest and went to look for it immediately, hot on the trail. They found nothing: no debris, no fire, no churned up earth, which a fall at such a speed is obliged to leave. The forest took what fell into it that day, and to this day has returned nothing, neither to people nor to explanations. Residents of California raised their eyes to the sun and saw it such as they had never seen it. Around the disk, rings and flashes of blue and white light lined up in layers, superimposed on each other, as if someone had drawn a target around the luminary. People all over the region noticed this simultaneously. Streets, parking lots, yards, everywhere someone stood and pointed upwards. Neither a weather phenomenon nor solar activity were publicly named as an explanation. Reactions divided exactly in two. Some saw in this a sign of the end times, others simply kept silent, not finding words. The sun, which you cannot look at, was examined by everyone on that day. A man in Peru had just approached his house when he noticed movement right above his roof. Several glowing lights were rushing in a wide arc in the dark sky, quickly, in a tight formation, loop after loop over the houses of the neighborhood. He filmed everything from his own yard, from the first circle to the moment when the lights went upwards and dissolved in the clouds. Explanations did not follow. Not a single agency reacted. The recording was left alone to prove its rightness. We are used to the strange happening somewhere far away, over other people's cities, in other people's countries, but sometimes it is most convenient for it to circle right over your porch. Late at night, a farmer heard a sound from the side of the field and went out to check, thought some animal had wandered in, and stopped at the edge of his own land rooted to the spot. Across the field, low over the ground, slowly floated a glowing sphere, flooding the wheat and the soil around with a pale, steady light. It itself did not emit a sound, but the air next to it felt different, as if this silence had its own density. The man stood, afraid to come closer, and unable to tear his gaze away. Then he retreated to the house anyway. The sphere went into the darkness as unhurriedly as it had appeared. The field was the same by morning. Answers never appeared. Write in the comments everything you think about this matter, your stories of observations if there are any, and subscribe to Top Facts for the most incredible selections of facts and videos from all over the internet. Thank you for watching, and right now click on one of our previous episodes which have already appeared on your screen.